All right. Good evening, everybody. It is so nice to have you on the line tonight. We're really excited about this Lead Like a Lady series that we'll have for the next 4 weeks. I'm really excited that WeTech rocks a consortium of women of like minds that came together to change the landscape for women in any area and to help you to navigate the course of being better, so you know that you're not alone. This Lead Like a Lady seminar is about being built to last. We'll have 4 weeks where we'll meet you at the same time every week to talk to you about compelling topics about leading like a lady. And so tonight what we want to do is we want to talk to you about leading from any chair. And it's very, very dear to my heart, leading from any chair, being a former NASA executive, a business leader, chair of the board of directors for an organization that is a national organization, also leading in the community. I had to lead from any chair depending on the framework from which I operated, depending on the job, no matter where I was in the organization, I still needed to lead. You know, leading is about influence. It's nothing more, nothing less than influencing. And the best example of leadership is personal leadership. And so when I think about leadership, I think about being accountable. I think about being credible. I think about being knowledgeable and also relatable to those that you serve and those that you lead. And tonight we have a wonderful guest, Kat Ripley. And she is a lady that I know is accountable. I know that she's credible. I know that she's knowledgeable, and she's very, very relatable. I have worked with her over several years, and she is an amazing lady. The best person that we can think of to talk to you about leading from any chair. She's an executive director. She is a leader. She's a strategic planner. She's a coach. She is a published author, and she had 26 years of executive leadership experience in the U.S. Navy. She was a naval officer. Let me tell you, ladies, that this lady is something else. She was also a U.S. diplomat to Europe and Africa for the U.S. Navy. She has a Bachelor of Science degree in engineering and political science. She has a Master's of Arts degree in National Security Affairs. Take notes, lady, National Security Affairs, a master in it, a bachelor's in engineering, political science. She is also a professor in one of our schools in Tucson, Arizona. She has traveled to over 80 countries. She'll talk to you a little bit more about that. But one thing I'd like to do is this woman, she is a co-author and a published author of this book called Women in Leadership. And I have read about Kat in this book. It is amazing. You should go right now. Well, not right now. Maybe after the session, go straight to Amazon or go to Barnes and Nobles. It is actually on Walmart online. You can buy it anywhere, and then you can learn about leading from a different perspective. But tonight we want to talk about leading from any chair. So I want to invite Kat to come and talk to you in her own way. Like I said, she's an extraordinary leader. She's an extraordinary lady. She's very relatable. And so, like I said, get your pens and get your pencils out, get your you all don't use Blackberries, do you anymore? iPhones, and get your Droids, get your iPads out. I just wanted to make sure you were listening. Get all of your things out that you take notes with. And I want you to listen up to Kat Ripley. Lead like a lady, built to last. Let us welcome Kat Ripley. There you go, Kat. Thank you so very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Goodson. This is an honor and a privilege to be here on your first episode. I'm so happy that you all are doing this, Odette, Yvette, Amanda. It's a wonderful thing that you're doing this, and I'm very happy and proud and honored to be one of your first speakers. So let me get to it. We have 5 to 7 minutes, I believe. And so I want to start with, you got a little bit of my background, but one little vignette is, when I was 18 years old, I got the call that I was accepted to the Naval Academy. And it's a school for building leaders in the United States Navy. And when I shared this with my friends, my close friends, and my favorite teacher, we all had that one teacher that was very special, Mr. McGann. They looked at me and they said, "Don't go. They will steal your soul. They will steal your identity. They will take away your femininity." You know, it's a military school, and women were brand new at the time. This was the third class of women to be admitted to any of the academies. So, you know, that scared me a little. But needless to say, I did go. You know, my dad was over the moon that I got accepted, and they didn't steal my soul. They didn't steal my creativity, and they did not steal my femininity, mostly because my roommates and I decided on day one that we would not let that happen. So even wearing men's uniforms and marching and carrying guns and all that kind of stuff they made us do, we maintained our identity, and I think that's really important. So like Amanda said, I did travel the world, and I did sit in many different chairs as a naval officer, and then in industry here in Tucson as a teacher. I've got 2 kids, you know, I'm a mom. So we as women are complex creatures. And I think having different chairs and also different hats, I like to use the hat metaphor. We put on different hats depending on the situation. So I'm going to talk to you about 3 things that really helped me, if you really want to narrow down, as I navigated through the many different jobs and chairs on different continents, as a leader, as a manager, and all the little hats that I had to wear in between. So one of the big questions that we have to ask is, what does it take to be a good leader as a woman in a predominantly male-dominated profession? So the simple answer right up front is to be yourself, right? It's all you can be. Don't try to be something else. Your knowledge, your education, all your training, everything that you need to do in that profession, no matter what it is, has to go without saying. Go get that education, get that training, be the best you can be at that profession, and bring it. And also be confident that you have it, that you can bring it. So what I want to talk about, I needed to get that out of the way. So I want to talk about how to harness all of that and combine it with who you are to be the best female leader in today's world. As I said, women are complex creatures. We have all these different hats, and we do different things depending on the time of day even. So I want to talk about, first of all, being flexible. That's number 1. You got to be flexible. We know how to multitask. Right. Those of you that are moms in the room, and especially in the olden days when women stayed home, we would frequently have a baby on one arm, stirring some food in the other arm in the cauldron, and a phone on your ear, and then yelling algebra quizzes to the other kid in the other room. We can do all of that at the same time. We spin plates. What other metaphor can we use? But you got to be careful that when you're spinning all those plates, they don't come crashing down. So you got to take care of yourself. But you got to be flexible. And I say this because when you are a leader and say you have more than 2 or 3 people that you're leading, not all of them are going to respond to who you are at that time. So you need to put on your coach hat, or your cheerleader hat, or your mom hat, or your disciplinarian hat, or your mentor hat, or your techie wonky hat. Whatever it is at the time, it's really, the onus is on you to be flexible, not on the people that are following you. So think about that. Be ready, because you might have to be ready. When I was a naval officer, for that older chief petty officer who comes in with he's got a chip on his shoulder and he doesn't like women leaders, and he's ready to take you on. You got to be ready, and you got to put on the right hat when you talk to him. And then you got to switch hats maybe the next hour when that young petty officer or sailor comes in tears. So you can't talk to that person the way you talk to that chief. You got to tone it down. So be flexible. Wear those hats. We can do this as women. We know how to turn it on and off, and we know how to switch chairs, if you will. So this brings me to my second point, which is use your God-given qualities as women, as people, as individuals. So we all have different strengths. Some of you are extroverted or funny or good at crisis management. You're super organized or you're super creative. You're an out of the box thinker. You're a take charge person, or are you more methodical? Are you a tech or policy wonk? Are you a morning person? I'm not. Are you better after lunch? Yes, I am. Are you good at details? Know your strengths, write them down, and maximize on those strengths. You're not going to be Superwoman. We all sometimes need to think that we are, but you don't try to hold yourself to that standard. So you have, and I don't even like to say weaknesses, there's challenges. Work on those challenges, but maximize those strengths. And you know what? We don't have the same strengths, so tap into those that do have those strengths. Right. Tap into someone else. You can't do it alone. So, and now my third point is, and this is lead like a lady, right? This is leading from any chair. I got this from the Naval Academy, 30 years in a male-dominated profession. Don't try to be a man. So my roommates and I, at the young age of 18, out of the mouths of babes, we decided, you know what? We are female midshipmen. We are not midshipmen. We are women that happen to be midshipmen. And we are going to maintain our femininity. And we're going to do it. We're going to do it well. And we are going to be the strongest female midshipman and later female officer that we can be. So embrace that. Embrace your femininity. Don't use it. Don't abuse it. And at all times, be professional. Like it or not, in a male-dominated profession, we live in a fishbowl. The minute you walk into that boardroom or into that office, or on that stage, you know, if you're leading Pilates, whatever you're doing, the first thing they see is what you look like. And the second thing they notice is what you sound like. You got to be professional. It's not fair. It's not right. But we are held to a different, if not higher standard. And you just have to own that. So always be professional, but also always maintain your uniqueness, because it's wonderful. Who you are is amazing. It's wonderful. And you just have to look in the mirror and just know it and be confident with that. So those are my 3 points that I wanted to bring up. I wanted to share. There's so much more. It sounds simple, and it is simple, but again, we are complex creatures. So I'm here for any questions and any comments.
So I've got a couple of comments. Now, you used a technical term that I hadn't heard in a long time, techie wonky hat. So I thought that was funny. And so I see what you're saying. Be unique how you are, whether you're a technocrat or a person that is you just like certain things that are different, the sciences, engineering, and there's some people that are deep in human resources. And so these 3 points that you made can also be used on woman-on-woman leadership challenges and leadership activities, and particularly with this unprecedented time we're in and the challenges that we have, then we must look at things a little differently. So point 1 was what again?
Point 1 is be flexible.
Point 2
is to embrace your strengths.
And point 3
is to don't try to be a man.
Don't try to be a man, and don't try to be like the woman that, if you've got a woman leader, you don't necessarily have to be like her. Just be like yourself. And so we have also on the line, we have Odetta Scott, MBA, and she has also a master's in organizational development. And so I'd like to invite her. She's part of the WeTech team. Do you have a question that came through? Let me give the instructions. I didn't do that. For those that are on the line, we had some people to call in. If you'd like to email us at WeTechRocks, WeTechRocks@gmail.com. And for the others, you can use the group chat. If you're online, you'd like to use the group chat or email us. Then we have a technical staff that is taking your questions, and what they're doing, they're sending them over to Odetta. And then I'm going to introduce Dr. Yvette Rice in a minute. But Odetta, do you have a question that came from one of our viewers?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much, Dr. Goodson. And Kat, thank you so much for sharing those 3 points, right? That we all, for me personally, very resourceful and resonated with me, right? So from a question standpoint, we do have a question. And the question is, based on your years of experience, both in the Navy, industry, as well as government, I think you said you had some, or private experience, then tell me how conflict management and emotional intelligence have been interjected and or leveraged by yourself to help you grow and develop?
Well, I think that
let me say this, and I think that came from a viewer from Texas. So that was a lady from Texas that asked that question. All right, thank you for letting me butt in there.
Yes. Okay. So that's where being flexible and wearing different hats would come into play, because when you're managing conflict, you got to know who, what the conflict is about. Is it with you and an employee, or is it amongst several employees? So the first thing I always do, and this is actually a trick from a drama class I took, is you have to ask, what does that person want? What do they, or all the people involved, what do they want? And you need to let them figure it out as well. They need to acknowledge, what do they want? Sometimes we have conflicts or fights and we forget what we're fighting about. So find out what they want, find out what it takes to get what they want, because sometimes they're not going to get what they want. And then you come to sometimes a compromise, but you got to figure out what they want, and they've got to say it out loud and acknowledge it. But again, using the hats. Are you going to be gentler and milder, depending on who you're talking about? Or are you going to be the strong, kind of hold your ground disciplinarian boss? Or are you going to be a coach, and are you going to be a little bit more, look at their strengths and their traits? I think that's where being flexible really counts as far as conflict management and emotional intelligence. That's up to you to be able to really know your people. That goes back to know your people. I mean, I had 400 people once, and it was hard for me to know every individual. But when you have a smaller group of people you're managing, you really need to know who they are with their families, their backgrounds. So that's the emotional intelligence, because then you can get down to really, what's this conflict about? What do they really, really want?
Thank you. I love that. I think we have another question. Dr. Yvette Rice, part of the WeTech Rocks team. She is an engineer with significant government experience, and she brings technical related experiences and make it relatable to the common person. So do you have a question for us, Dr. Rice?
I certainly do. This is from Naomi Rivera from Arizona, and she wants to know, do you feel being a woman gives you unique leadership skills?
Is this for me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I do, because one of the things is, and because this can be taken good or bad, in a good way or a bad way, but like I said, when you walk in the room, people size you up. It doesn't matter who you are, a woman. I mean, we just do that. They size you up physically, and then they listen to your voice. And then only then do they listen to actually what you have to say. So, I mean, I just have one example. When I walked into the president of Comoros, it's a little African island nation, 100% Muslim nation. He didn't like Americans, and women were second-class citizens there. And everyone told me, you're never going to get in the door. He's never going to listen to you. If you do get in the door, you'll never get anything done. So long story short, I did get a lot done, because what I did was I didn't abuse my femininity, but what I did was I made friends with his family. I talked about his kids, about my kids. And I think this is something that arguably women are better at actually not necessarily being humble about it, but basically knowing, this is the emotional intelligence, knowing who your audience is. In this case, a president of a country that just didn't treat their women well. I presented myself as an American, but he couldn't help but see that I was a woman. So I thought that was to my advantage. And a general, a Marine Corps general who came to visit, and I took him to that country, looked at me and he said, without saying the words, without expanding, he said, wow, they really knew what they were doing when they picked you to be in this job. And I think it's because I could have doors opened that I think my male counterparts might not have been as successful at.
So I think we have a follow-up question that Yvette is going to ask. Do you have that follow-up question?
Yes, and this is from Naomi as well. She says, what strategies do you use to continually expand your expertise and diversify your knowledge base?
Oh, it's simple. It's not really a fancy strategy. I read all the time. I read everything I can get my hands on. And if I do watch TV, so, political science is my background and international relations. So if I do watch television, I do watch the news channels from all sides, if you will, because it's political, right? So, and I tell my students the same way, you got to read everything and you have to know what all sides are saying. So I expand my base by reading books, by reading articles, by keeping up to date with what's going on. And I attend webinars like this one.
Yay.
That's good. So I do have a question that I want to ask. What is the most successful thing, or you can even talk about a challenge? What is the most successful thing that you've ever done, and what is the greatest challenge that you've overcome?
I think professionally, one of my greatest successes is when I was in Madagascar, and I essentially shamed the State Department into giving me $1 million, which is a lot of money for an African nation, but a drop in the bucket for the State Department. So I found that, and this is being, this has nothing to do with being a woman, but really digging into and not taking no for an answer, digging into where I could get humanitarian assistance in Africa to build HIV/AIDS clinics. And I found a loophole where there was this stash of money from the diplomats in Washington, D.C. who hadn't paid their parking tickets. So I heard, because you expand your network, this is a lesson. I had a network of friends at the Pentagon and State Department. I found this loophole. I knocked on their doors. I screamed until they said, just shut her up, give her the money. And I built the first 5 clinics in this small African nation. And I was really proud of that. I was proud that I got that done. And it was persistence and not taking no for an answer, and do it. And it helps when you know you're doing the right thing, when you know it's a good cause. So that was my biggest success. What was the second question?
Well, what was your like the thing that didn't work so well for you? What was the greatest challenge that you had?
Oh, wow. There's probably a few of them, but I think one of my biggest challenges is happening now. So this is a different chair for me. I've always been in a traditional leadership role where I've had people working for me. I'd be up at the top, or I would have a boss too, but I would have a staff, if you will, a staff of people who did the administrative things and the technical things. I'm in a job now, and so I'm in the middle of this challenge where all my staff are volunteers. So leading from a new chair and being the leader of a staff of, close to 100 volunteers is different, because you can't fire them, and you don't want to fire them, but and you can't really discipline them. You have to kindly and gently know how to rally them and get them to do things because they want to do them. So this is a challenge for me, and it's still going on. I haven't quite cracked that nut, except just treat them like a family. It's a different, volunteer-run nonprofits are completely different cat. So.
Very good. Thank you. So we've got about 5 more minutes, and what I want to do is ask Dr. Rice and ask Odetta to give us their final points. Kat, you did a wonderful job. I learned a lot from you. Thank you so very much. I know if I need $1 million, where to come. So thank you so very much for sharing that. I know that our listeners would like to know about strategies too. So thank you for sharing. So I'm going to start with Odetta. Odetta, what final points would you like to leave? Just about 15 seconds or so.
So my final points, again, just want to thank you, Kat, for sharing your story with us. Very impressive, from the Naval Academy to then, the 3 points we walk away with from. The second point was about maximizing your strength. The first point being flexible, and the third point, don't be a man. All of those resonated with me from the standpoint. I facilitated a workshop here probably within the last 3 or 4 weeks, but one of my takeaways from there was awesome has to be good enough, right? So awesome is good enough. Awesome is good enough. And that, to me, that tapestry and leading from any chair, though we strive for perfection, awesome is good enough. And Kat, your time with us tonight really reinforced that for me. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Yvette.
So I'm going to give my comment up to, her name is Sarah, and she sent a question in through the chat, if you don't mind. And she had I thought was a very good question for all of us. She said, a lot of your experience comes from a male-dominated background. Have you ever worked in a female-dominated workplace? And do you approach conflict differently with a female coworker than you do with a male? I'll start it off and I'll let you all finish it up if you don't mind.
We do have 3 minutes. We have 3 minutes.
Okay, so from that perspective, when it comes to conflict management, it still boils down to getting to know the people that you work with, whether they're male or female, understanding who they are from an emotional intelligence standpoint, as well as how they handle conflict, what mode of conflict management that they use. Those are important to look at as far as being able to work with them. And some, you know, for us as women, we have to work through our emotions. I'll let anybody else want to share on the last 2 or 3 minutes from that.
Well, the challenge that you asked me about, Amanda, that I'm in right now is it is predominantly 90% women volunteers. So I'm living it now, and I do have to approach it differently, both because they're volunteers and they're women, and a lot of them are women my age and older. So it's a whole different set of emotional intelligence skills that you need, and it takes a lot of patience and a lot of empathy, and it's kind of I try to put myself in on equal ground. I look at it as a sisterhood. And so I don't look at them as, you know, my employees or me, their boss. I try to say, hey, I've been through what you're doing, and I know what you're going through as a woman. So there's a lot of empathy, I think, when you have women in your workplace.
And sometimes they're not. They have an expectation for you to, like you said, for the sisterhood to work and for you to give them grace and that kind of thing. And I think as we work it out, and like you said, understand, Yvette said, their conflict resolution style, and you said understand the framework from which they operate, because they have some similar experiences and some have different experiences. So navigating through the course. We do have some other questions that were asked. Again, if you can email WeTechRocks@gmail.com. We'll get it to you, or if you put it in the chat, then what we'd like to do is look at your questions and respond to your questions. If you put your name and information in there, then we're happy to respond. If you would like to talk to Kat about coaching or further conversation, she's available at kathyripley@yahoo.com. CATHY Ripley, RIPLEY @yahoo.com. We thank you so very much for joining us today. It is amazing to talk about leading from any chair. I know that you have a lot of questions, and there's a lot of things that we could have talked about that we didn't today, but we still want to be in contact with you. So if you email us, we're happy to call. We're happy to email you back and answer your questions. Next week, we're going to talk about behavior shaping your performance counts. And so what is important about your performance? And then we've touched on emotional intelligence tonight. And then to next week, we're going to talk about that a little bit more. We'll have a leader that will talk to us about shaping your behavior that will equal to excellent performance. And I really like what Odetta said, being awesome. And what is the word? You said awesome is good enough. What did you say?
Awesome is good enough.
Yeah.
Exactly what you just said.
Awesome is good enough. So I believe that you're awesome. We are so glad that you joined us tonight. We thank you, WeTech Rocks, as a team. We thank you so much. Kat, we thank you. You all are amazing ladies. You have the ability to do amazing things. You have a compelling future, and we know it. We want to share it with you, and we want to celebrate you through it. Thanks so very much for joining with us tonight. Thank you for joining us. You are, like I said, amazing, and it is awesome to see you. Take care, and we'll look to see you soon.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.